Okie doke. We are math questions.
This is so scary. This is much scarier than teaching, I have to tell you.
Yeah, just it'll be conversational.
Okay, good.
Anytime you need to stop or take a look, not a problem.
Okay.
So we're going to talk about the sequence of your lesson plans. So we want to understand the decisions you made in planning for this lesson and how it fits into the unit and year. So how does this lesson connect to and build upon students' prior skills and knowledge? What was taught before this lesson and what will come after it? Discuss the sequence of lessons that surround this one lesson.
Okay. So this lesson was the second lesson in a unit that we have on quadrilaterals. And usually we teach this right around the third quarter of the year because by then kids know how to make proofs with right triangles, particularly with congruent right triangles. And so that's something that they need a background with. They also needed some familiarity with special right triangles and some proficiency in being able to use ratios and the Pythagorean theorem in order to solve stuff. The last section that we did prior to this one was really focused on parallelograms, all of the properties of parallelograms and how to prove that a quadrilateral is a parallelogram. And then after this lesson, we're going to look at the other types of special quadrilaterals, rhombi and squares and kites and trapezoids. And then we'll finish up the unit with geometric probability.
Cool. All right, so talk about the standards or cluster targeted in this lesson. What did you do to make the lesson reflect the full intent of that standard or cluster?
Do I have to give the numbers for the standards?
If you do have them offhand.
I can grab it really
okay.
fast.
Sure.
Okay. But I don't have it.
But if you have to go hunting, not a big deal.
Okay. I might have to hunt a little bit. Because I think I gave that copy away. All right. Parallelograms. Okay. So there's a couple different standards that I was aiming to hit, but the two main ones, the first one was geometry, so GCO, number 10 or number 11, and that's proof theorems about parallelograms, and that included not just parallelograms but the special types of parallelograms. So we were really working on proving theorems about rectangles. And then the second one that I was really focusing on was also in the geometry section. So this was GPE number 4. And this was use coordinate proofs in order to prove geometric theorems algebraically. And so that was the intent of the coordinate proof at the end of the lesson.
Cool.
All
right, and then which of the core action indicators do you think this lesson best exemplified?
Okay, let me look. I was really trying to focus on core indicators 3, and I felt like that the kids were really persistent in their learning and persevering with their challenges, and that's what we were trying to really target today, along with being able to hear the explanations that other people made and critique those and really use explanations to their reasons as to why they did something, and being able to explain them with some proficiency and use some good mathematical knowledge to model their thinking.
Okay. This is about the shifts.
Okay.
Discuss how this lesson illustrates the shifts required by the CCSS.
Okay, so one of the main shifts of the Common Core is to really focus on the standards. And the standards are written a little bit differently for the two standards that I was really aiming for. They were both really focused on proving the properties. And so being able to really not just have the kids become familiar with the properties, but have them prove them ended up being a big chunk of the time that we spent on the lesson. And so I think that the shifts really kind of pushed me in that direction versus just them having familiarity with how to use the properties.
All right. How did you teach the content of this lesson prior to the CCSS?
Okay. So prior to the implementation of the Common Core, I think I did do some proofs with the properties, but my focus was more on using the properties and maybe having kids classify a quadrilateral based from a diagram. So it was perhaps a little bit more of a surface approach to it, and so it didn't require the depth of the thinking. And so I didn't really as often have them sit down and prove everything. We might do informal proofs, but this was much more formal today than I've done in the past.
All right. Burning through these. This is good. We got 10 minutes left here. A little less. So how did the students handle this lesson? Did they understand the mathematics, and how do you know?
Okay. I do think that there was some good understanding of the mathematics. I think that there were some areas that they left probably with a little bit of maybe frustration with, or I maybe don't know if I could do that on my own. I could only do that with somebody else, because there was some pretty good rigor in some of the algebra that they had with some of the problems, and then just being able to start some of the problems. I do think overall, though, that they made really good progress towards having good understanding, and the evidence that I have for them is just, I really spent a lot of time with them today. And so I had an opportunity to walk around, to hear their thoughts, to see what type of work they came up with, and at times hear their frustrations. I had one boy who, near the end, he was done, and I had to say, come on, give me just a couple more minutes of effort. So I think they left pretty tired. I think they worked pretty hard today. But I think that there was some good learning that happened. I don't think the learning's complete yet. I think I'll know a little bit more after they have a chance to practice some of this independently, because today was very group heavy. So having a chance for them to go home and try some of this on their own on their homework, I'll have a better sense next class as to how well they're internalizing everything and putting all the pieces together.
Absolutely. All right. Explain how you've differentiated in this lesson. Did all students have opportunity to work on grade level content?
Okay, so all of the content was grade level, but within that, there were certainly different levels of thinking required to solve some of the problems. So the two proofs that we had, one proof was quite challenging and one proof was pretty straightforward. And so some of the kids who were maybe at a little bit more of an introductory level, they really focused on that second proof. And on that first proof, they had to depend very heavily upon their partners, or even wait until the solutions were put up in order to really kind of see some of the pieces that they were missing. So there was some differentiation in there, just because they could still do grade level content with the second one, and then the first one was more of a push towards some of the kids who needed to be challenged, and some of those kids really dug into that first proof. The 4 problems where they had to practice using the properties, kind of similar, where some of them were pretty straightforward. The first 2 were pretty straightforward, and to some degree, the last one as well. But that third one was really aimed intentionally at giving those higher kids something that would make them think and would stretch them. So my intent was to have at least 1 or 2 problems on each type that kids felt like, I could do this one, I have an entry point, I know how to get this problem started, and then to always have something to challenge the upper kids. And so that's how I differentiated.
Sweet. Which behaviors from the core action 3 did the students best exemplify in this lesson?
I think the first indicator A was shown really well, because they had to keep persevering. Most of these problems were not ones that kids were going to get on their first attempt. So, and I tried to encourage that by allowing them to work independently and then work with groups, or maybe even the times where they got to see what another group's work was to get some ideas. That was intentional, to try to help them learn to be more persistent in their learning. Another indicator that I think was strongly seen was F, where the students are asked to justify their reasoning and explain it. So not just say what the answer is, but to describe how they got the answer. And that was done in front of the whole group when kids would come up and present, but also within their groups as I was walking around, and sometimes they would say, here's what I got. And I would say, now tell me why that works. Or have you thought about this? So to try to push them beyond just a rote practice, but to help them think. And so I think those are the 2 strongest that we're seeing.
All right. So this will be the last question, and then I'll just have you do a quick intro.
Okay.
So reflecting on the lesson, what worked particularly well, and what might you do differently?
Okay. I think what worked really well was the opportunity for kids to work together and the opportunity for them to be independent. But I kind of wish, if I could go back, that maybe I would have done one less problem on the properties, just because we got a little crammed on time for the coordinate geometry proof at the end, and I really would have liked to have maybe 5 more minutes with them on that. And then I think I would have liked to just maybe front load a little bit more the importance of them using the formal definition of a parallelogram in their proofs, because that was such a stumbling block for the kids, particularly in the first proof that they did. And I think that if I had maybe found a way to emphasize that a little bit more, that they would have had a little bit more success in that proof and not get stuck quite so easily.
All right.
Cool.
Cool. And then I'll just have you say your name directly to camera, what grade you just taught, and just what the class.
So there were more than one grade levels in there. Should I say both?
Yep.
Okay, so name, grade level taught, and the name of the course?
And the school. Yeah.
And the school. All right. My name is Elena Ault. I teach at Demonte Ranch High School, and this lesson is for a formal geometry class, which is primarily composed of 9th and 10th graders.
That was it.
All right.